Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a debate that is literally as old as time, one that completely dictates who we spend our holidays with and who we call when we're in an absolute crisis. We're talking about family versus friends. Now, we normally think of these two incredibly important spheres of life as entirely separate things, right? But as you'll see, the source text actually reveals a fascinating blueprint for how they're meant to interact. Okay, so let's dive right into this. Take a quick second and think about your own life. Are you team family or team friends? We all have our personal biases, right? It's based on our own lived experiences. Maybe you have an incredibly tight-knit biological family. Or maybe your closest friends are the ones who have truly been there for you when it mattered most. As we explore the text today, we're going to confront some of those biases head-on, because the answers we find, well, they're likely going to surprise you. Section 1, Thesis, the foundation of family. Right, so before we can even look at the tension between these two groups, we've got to understand the immense societal weight that the biblical text places on the family unit. Right from the very beginning, in the book of Genesis, we see this really foundational truth. It is not good that the man should be alone. Think about that. The very first earthly institution God established wasn't a government, it wasn't a nation, and it wasn't even the church. It was the family. Marriage and family became the absolute foundation from which all of human society grew. It was specifically designed to be the primary classroom where we learn the most vital human lessons, things like love, justice, and, how to share a bathroom. Which actually brings us to a really fascinating piece of data. Think about the number 10 for a second. We all know the 10 Commandments. But an incredibly intriguing insight from our source material is that these commandments actually devote more rules to relationships within the family than to almost any other human institution. Why is that? Because the text recognizes a stark reality. The home is where absolutely every society is ultimately built or broken. Moving to section 2, Antithesis, the power of friendship. So, family is clearly paramount. We've established that. But just when family seems like the undisputed champion of human relationships, the text introduces this radical, countercultural paradigm shift. Listen to this genuinely shocking statement from Jesus. "He who loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me." I mean, that kind of jolts you, doesn't it? But see, he isn't saying this to diminish the family. What he's actually doing is completely redefining ultimate loyalty. In this worldview, God comes first, and then every single other relationship follows. Even family, as sacred as it is, must never replace devotion to God. And this opens the door to a totally new way of defining our closest bonds. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast that gets set up here. On one side, you have biological family, which is completely based on DNA and inherent belonging. You don't choose your family, you're just born into it. But then you have friendship, and friendship is entirely voluntary. It is based on chosen loyalty and a shared purpose. Because friendship is this active, daily choice, the text actually speaks of true friendship with an extraordinary amount of depth. Take the Hebrew concept of the word knit, for example. In 1 Samuel, the text says, "The soul of Jonathan was knit with the soul of David." This is a beautiful expression where lives become intricately bound together, not just by mutual benefits, but through a shared covenant faithfulness. This was basically the ultimate biblical friendship. It was so profound that Jonathan shockingly surrendered his own claim to the royal throne because he recognized God's calling on his friend David. Guys, that is chosen loyalty in absolute action. So the crucial point is captured perfectly right here in the book of Proverbs. There is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. The text elevates friendship remarkably. Notice it doesn't put down brothers or biological family. Rather, it's suggesting that genuine covenant friendship can actually become even more dependable than your own biology. And honestly, perhaps the most surprising statement on friendship actually comes from Jesus himself. He says, "I no longer call you servants. I have called you friends." In the ancient world, this was revolutionary. I mean, think about it. Kings had servants. Masters had slaves. Teachers had disciples. Rulers absolutely did not call their followers friends. But Jesus does. He implies this deep relationship of shared trust, shared knowledge, and completely mutual love. That brings us to section 3, Synthesis, blood versus covenant. So we have this immense weight of biological family on one hand, and then this incredible chosen loyalty of friendship on the other. How does the text actually resolve this intense tension? Well, if there's literally just one central paradigm-shifting insight you take away from this explainer today, let it be this. Blood creates relatives, but covenant creates family. While genetics might hand you a list of relatives, the quiet theme running throughout the entire text is that it's actually covenant faithfulness that builds a true family. This family is ultimately defined not by genetics at all, but by covenant. Finally, Section 4, the eternal family. Which really brings us to the ultimate biblical answer. The text doesn't actually force you to pick a side between family and friends. Instead, it perfectly merges the belonging of family with the chosen loyalty of friendship into one vastly greater reality. You can actually see exactly how the early believers practically applied this merging of realities. They adopted entirely new titles for one another. They called each other brothers, sisters, children of God, heirs together. They completely erased biological and social lines. It didn't matter if you were Jew or Greek, Roman, rich, poor, slave, or free. People with zero biological ancestry genuinely became a brand new family through their shared covenant. Because of this whole shift, the church was literally meant to become the family many people simply never had. This perfectly explains why Jesus made that incredible promise in Mark chapter 10. He said that anyone who leaves their earthly family or homes for his sake will receive 100-fold of brothers, sisters, and homes among God's people. It's the absolute ultimate provision for human connection. Let's zoom out for a second and see how this builds across the entire timeline. It's a genuinely beautiful progression. In Era 1, Genesis, it starts with just one family, Adam and Eve. Then, in Era 2, the Old Testament, it grows into one nation, Israel. In Era 3, the New Testament, it explodes to include every nation through the early believers. And finally, in Era 4, Revelation, it culminates in one redeemed family from absolutely every tribe and tongue worshiping together. The plan has always been about continually enlarging the family. So, what does this all actually mean for us today? Well, it's pretty profound. Earthly family and friendship are living illustrations. They aren't the final destination. The text says marriage reflects the relationship between Christ and the church. Friendship reflects God's covenant faithfulness. Family teaches us about belonging. Friendship teaches us about chosen loyalty. But they both simply act as signposts pointing toward God's eternal fellowship. And, Jesus perfectly combined both of these concepts in his own life. In one breath, we see him honoring his earthly family, even while suffering on the cross. He made sure to entrust his mother to John's care. But in the very next breath, we see him forming these deeply emotional, chosen friendships with people like Lazarus, Peter, and John. He proved once and for all that love for family and love for friends are not competitors. They both flourish beautifully when they're centered on God. So, we've arrived at our final question. The reality is, earthly relationships can be really flawed. Some of us have amazing, loving families, while others have known deep, deep disappointment. Some have found lifelong friends, others are honestly still intensely lonely. But the text speaks hope into every single one of those circumstances. Because the greatest privilege isn't just having a good earthly household or a loyal friend, it's this ultimate invitation. Will you choose to be welcomed into the eternal family of God? In this framework, the gifts of birth and the gifts of choice converge into something completely eternal. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll leave you to ponder that question.